You're about to hear a story that will make you question everything. A powerful CEO, smug and untouchable, mocked a young maid's daughter, daring her to fix an issue in the company, or else. But what happened next would blow the CEO's mind. This teenager, with nothing but raw intelligence and determination, took on a multi-billion-dollar corporation and turned the tables in a way no one expected. How did she do it? And what dark secret did her mother's job hide? Keep watching to find out. It was just another ordinary day for Maya. At 16, she had mastered the art of juggling school, homework, and her after-school job at the local cafe. A shy, quiet teenager, Maya didn't seek the spotlight. She wasn't the type to dream of fame or fortune, but she was determined to work hard, to carve out a future for herself, one that didn't depend on anyone else. Her mother, Maria, worked as a maid for one of the wealthiest families in the city, a job that Maya knew was tiring, thankless, and barely paid enough to cover their bills. Still, her mom always smiled when she came home, telling Maya that every sacrifice she made was for her daughter's future. Maya hated seeing her mother struggle. She had a quiet determination that burned deep inside her, driving her to help at the cafe whenever she could. It was there, behind the counter, that she learned how the world worked. She'd overhear conversations about money, about power, and the divide between those who had everything and those who had nothing. Her mother often told her not to worry about things beyond their control. But Maya couldn't help but feel that there was more to life than what she could see from behind the counter of that cafe. One day, everything changed. It was a typical Thursday, and Maya was closing up the cafe when her phone buzzed. A message from her mother read, "I need you to come to the house today." Something's happened. Her stomach tightened. There was no context, no explanation. Just those words. It wasn't unusual for her mother to ask her to come to the house for little things, like fixing a small issue or delivering forgotten items, but the urgency in her text sent a chill down Maya's spine. When Maya arrived at the sprawling mansion that her mother worked in, she didn't expect what she was about to face. She was led through the grand halls, past the pristine marble floors, and finally into the lavish office of her mother's employer, Mr. Jenkins, a CEO who controlled one of the biggest corporations in the city. But Mr. Jenkins wasn't alone. Standing by his side was another woman, an unfamiliar face, dressed in a business suit, exuding confidence and wealth. Maya's mother looked uneasy, her hands clasped tightly together. "Ah, Maya, perfect timing," Mr. Jenkins said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I was just telling your mother how frustrating things can be when the help doesn't get things right. I told her if she couldn't fix it, maybe her daughter could." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Something wasn't right. The woman in the suit gave her a dismissive glance before speaking. "We're facing a technical issue with one of our systems," she said, her voice cold and detached. "We're asking your mother to handle it. But it seems like we'll need someone who actually knows what they're doing." Mr. Jenkins smirked. "If Maya can fix it, I'll give her $100 million. If not, well, maybe it's time for your mother to find a different job." Maya's heart raced, but she stood still, not fully understanding what had just happened. It wasn't just a matter of fixing a system. There was something else, something far more personal, lurking beneath the surface. Her mother was humiliated, her career now tied to Maya's ability to perform a task she didn't fully understand. All of this was the beginning of something much bigger. The power dynamics in this room weren't just about work, they were about race, privilege, and the system that kept people like her mother in place. Maya didn't know how, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going to let her mother lose everything because of one arrogant man's twisted game. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. This was just the beginning. What Maya didn't know was that the journey ahead would push her to the limits of her intelligence, her grit, and her courage. And in doing so, she would take on a battle much bigger than she ever imagined. The days following Mr. Jenkins' challenge felt like a blur to Maya. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, and the sudden weight of responsibility that had been thrust upon her. The promise of $100 million was nothing compared to what it symbolized: her mother's career, her dignity, their survival. It felt like the world was stacked against them, and all Maya had was her wits, a laptop, and a newfound resolve. Her mother avoided her gaze most of the time, as if trying to shield Maya from the mounting pressure. They couldn't talk about it at home. Maya knew better than to bring up the incident, but she could feel the tension simmering in the air, thick with unspoken words. At night, she would hear her mother cry in the bathroom, the soft, muffled sobs breaking her heart in a way that made her feel powerless. But Maya was done being powerless. Maya spent every waking hour researching, learning, and practicing. The task Mr. Jenkins had set her was simple on the surface, a technical glitch in his company's software that she was supposed to fix. But it was so much more than that. It wasn't about fixing a system. It was about proving she was worthy, proving she belonged, and that people like her mother and herself weren't invisible or disposable. She sat hunched over her laptop in the cafe after hours, watching tutorial videos, reading coding guides, and testing different solutions. Her eyes burned with fatigue, but she couldn't stop. The cafe, usually a haven of background noise and clinking coffee cups, now felt like her battlefield. Every time she encountered a roadblock, the anxiety clawed at her chest, but she pushed through it. There was no other choice. The more Maya dug into the software, the more she realized how deeply the company's structure was rooted in bias. Everything, from the way they communicated, the language they used, to the way they expected results, revolved around the assumption that only a certain type of person, with a certain background, had the right to be a part of it. It wasn't just the software glitch she had to fix, it was the culture of exclusion, the classism, the casual racism that oozed from the upper echelons of society. Her first real encounter with this bias came one late night when she met with the lead tech engineer for a quick consultation. She had grown desperate and thought that reaching out might help, but from the moment the engineer greeted her, Maya knew something was off. He was an older man, maybe in his early 40s, wearing a sharp suit that reeked of privilege. He looked her up and down, his gaze lingering just a moment too long. The discomfort in his eyes was hard to ignore. He didn't even offer his hand as he spoke to her. Instead, he simply asked, "So, you're Maya, the maid's daughter?" Maya stiffened. She didn't know how to respond at first, so she kept her voice steady. "Yes, I'm here to help fix the issue with the system." He smiled condescendingly, like he had just been handed the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. "Right, well, let's see if you can even follow the instructions I send your way. We'll see if the help you can offer is up to par." His words dripped with mockery. Maya's heart pounded. She was used to people looking down on her, used to hearing the whispers behind her back, but never had she felt so openly humiliated, not to her face, like this. She clenched her fists, but she couldn't afford to lose her cool. Not now. Not in front of him. She simply nodded and took the documents he handed her. "Thank you," she said, though her voice was barely above a whisper. As she walked out, she could feel the weight of his gaze on her back. He didn't see her as a person, just a problem to be solved, a nuisance. Later that night, Maya found herself sitting in her small bedroom, staring at the task list in front of her. She wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room, but something inside her kept pushing her forward. Her mother's face, tear-streaked and worn out, flashed in her mind. That was all the motivation she needed. She continued working, ignoring the exhaustion gnawing at her, ignoring the nagging voice telling her that this was all too big for her. As the days passed, she began to find her rhythm. The system she was working on was sophisticated, but not beyond her grasp. She identified coding errors, misconfigurations, and inefficient processes that had been overlooked for years. Each time she fixed a bug, it felt like a small victory. But there was still one problem she couldn't solve. Her big breakthrough came one morning when she stumbled across an algorithm buried deep in the code, an algorithm that didn't belong. It wasn't part of the original design. It was as if someone had embedded a hidden feature, one that could compromise the integrity of the entire system. It was sophisticated, too sophisticated for her to have noticed until now, but there it was, like a secret being hidden in plain sight. Maya's heart raced as she traced the code back to its source. And that's when it hit her. The algorithm wasn't a glitch at all. It was intentional. It had been placed there deliberately, and it was set to trigger only under specific conditions, conditions that she now realized were tied to the very data she was working with. In other words, the system was rigged to fail when someone from her background tried to access it. The realization felt like a punch to the gut. All the hard work she'd put in, all the sleepless nights, and this whole time. They had been setting her up to fail. The company had engineered a system that discriminated against people like her, people from the lower class, people without the right connections, people whose only worth was in how hard they worked, not in who they knew. But Maya wasn't ready to give up. Not now. Not after everything her mother had sacrificed for her to be here. She knew the answer was hidden in that algorithm. And if she could figure it out, she'd expose the truth to the world. But before she could take another step, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if this wasn't just about fixing the system? What if this was the point where she had to make a decision that could change everything? Was she ready to expose the truth? Was she ready to fight a system that would stop at nothing to crush her? The pressure of it all settled in her chest like a weight, but Maya knew one thing for certain: she was going to finish what she started. No matter what it took. As she sat back, her fingers hovered over the keyboard, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. By whom? By the company? By Mr. Jenkins? Or was it just the weight of what was to come? She couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear: the next chapter in this battle was about to begin, and Maya was ready to face it head-on. But would she succeed? Or would they crush her like they had crushed so many others before her? Only time would tell. Maya sat in the conference room, her fingers trembling as they hovered over her laptop. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in on her, but she refused to let the pressure break her. Across from her, Mr. Jenkins leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in a way that made him look more like a predator than a businessman. Beside him, the same tech engineer who'd mocked her just days ago, stood with a smug smile plastered on his face. It was the final showdown. Maya had spent the last few days piecing together her findings, anomalies in the system, hidden algorithms that discriminated against people like her. And now, she was about to confront them all. "Go ahead, Maya," Mr. Jenkins said, his voice oozing with condescension. "Impress us. Fix the system, or you can watch your mother pack her bags and leave. It's your choice." Maya's heart hammered in her chest. She had been given nothing but mockery, disdain, and impossible odds since the moment she walked into this room. But now, with the last piece of the puzzle in front of her, everything was about to change. She clicked the keys with precision, the code flowing faster than she had ever typed before. Every line she typed was a defiance, a declaration that she wouldn't let her background, her race, or her social status define her future. The system, rigged and biased, was about to be exposed for the fraud it was. As the minutes ticked by, the engineer's confidence started to waver. He exchanged uneasy glances with Mr. Jenkins, who was still trying to maintain his smug composure, but Maya could see the tension in his eyes. He was losing control. Suddenly, her screen flashed. An alert popped up. "Error, access denied." Maya's stomach dropped. She knew immediately what had happened. The system had blocked her entry, trying to stop her from going any further. It was a fail-safe, something Mr. Jenkins and his team had put in place to prevent anyone from breaking the code. But Maya wasn't giving up. Not now. With a few quick keystrokes, she bypassed the fail-safe, running an override script she had written herself. The room seemed to grow colder as the algorithm she had been fighting against began to crack. Slowly, line by line, the discriminatory coding unraveled, exposed for what it truly was: hidden clauses that coded certain biases, treating people differently based on their socio-economic background. Maya looked up, her gaze locking with Mr. Jenkins for the first time. The arrogance was gone from his face. Something darker, fear. "You can't do this," he said, his voice losing its edge. "This is bigger than you. You don't understand what you're playing with." "Oh, I understand," Maya shot back, her voice steady, her eyes burning with determination. "This isn't about fixing a system. It's about exposing the lies you've been hiding behind for years." She hit enter with a final click. The system crashed. For a long moment, the room was silent, the only sound the rapid beating of Maya's heart. Mr. Jenkins stood up, pacing back and forth, muttering under his breath. The tech engineer, who had been so confident earlier, now looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mr. Jenkins asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and growing rage. Maya stood up, her posture straightening. "I just made sure no one else would be discriminated against because of their background. Your system wasn't broken, it was built this way." It was as if the air itself had been charged with electricity. The room was thick with tension, but Maya stood her ground. She had no time for fear anymore. "You can fire me. You can even sue me. But what you can't do is hide the truth anymore. It's out there now," she said, her voice unwavering. Her words hung in the air like a challenge Mr. Jenkins wasn't prepared for. His eyes flickered with anger and then with something else, something Maya couldn't quite place, but she knew he wasn't going to give up without a fight. "Do you really think people will believe you? You're just a kid. They'll never take you seriously," Mr. Jenkins said, a twisted smile forming on his face. But Maya didn't flinch. "Maybe I'm just a kid. But I'm the one who brought the truth to light. I'm the one who exposed the ugly side of this company. And I have a feeling people are going to listen." There was a pause, a charged silence, and then Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the notification. Her mother had texted her, simply, "I'm proud of you." Maya looked up at Mr. Jenkins and the engineer, who were now visibly sweating. Their faces twisted with frustration, but they were powerless. She had done what they had thought was impossible. She had outsmarted them, and now the world would see the truth. Just then, the door swung open, and a group of reporters flooded into the room, cameras flashing. Maya had reached out to a journalist friend earlier that day, tipping them off about the system's flaws. She hadn't expected them to arrive so quickly, but the timing couldn't have been more perfect. The journalists were here to hear the full story, her story. "You." Mr. Jenkins spat, his face red with rage. "This is all you're doing, isn't it?" Maya smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was a smile of relief, of knowing she had finally done the right thing. The reporters surged forward, their microphones aimed directly at her. She took a deep breath, standing taller than she had ever felt before. "Yes, it's all me," Maya said, her voice calm and clear. "And now, you'll have to answer for it." As the questions began to fly, Maya realized something. This wasn't just about fixing a broken system. It was about exposing the unfairness, the inequality, and the biases that had plagued her and her mother for years. In that moment, as the cameras clicked and the world began to listen, Maya knew one thing for sure: she had won. Not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel invisible. The battle wasn't over, but she had taken the first step. And now, the world would see what had been hidden for so long. The truth is out there now, she thought, as the reporters' questions continued. And it's only just begun. Maya had won. The dust had barely settled when Maya stood in front of the world's eyes, the weight of the moment sinking in. What started as an ordinary day had spiraled into something that felt almost impossible, yet here she was, standing in the aftermath of the battle she had fought and won. The media frenzy that followed her exposure of the company's discriminatory system was overwhelming. Articles were written. News reports were broadcast. Bloggers and activists shared Maya's story far and wide, turning her once quiet life into something completely different. Her name, once just a whispered mention among the cafe regulars, was now being spoken with admiration and awe. The same people who had dismissed her as nothing more than a maid's daughter.